What is a disability then? Give me what the bar is.
Well, it's anything that negatively impacts your quality of life for the rest of your life. If we were going to look at it from a purely physical point of view, 7% of disabled people are wheelchair users. They do not make up the majority of disability, but it is the only type that people understand. I think people need to realise how many of us there are. And, like myself, 80% of us acquire our disability, so we're not born with it. Disability makes up 0.02% of advertising. Like, that's how often we're shown.
That has changed radically in the last couple of years.
I think also it would help if we had actual disabled people in the disability minister roles in government.
You make a really good point. Why aren't those people disabled? It should be a requirement of the job.
What do you think is in your industry and why?
The snobbery of the industry is bull.
For our last episode of 2024, here's a lovely cracker from the archives for you this Christmas. We meet adaptive and universal fashion pioneer Victoria Jenkins. Don't worry, she explains the difference between the two. She tells us why the recent government campaign Ask, Don't Assume was, frankly, a pain in the arse. We also discuss the problem of inspirational porn in general and the Paralympics in particular, plus how successive governments have created a truly hostile environment for disabled people. Check it out. Hello and welcome to Business Without Bullshit. I am Andy Ori and alongside me is Pippa Sturd.
Hi, Andy.
Hello, Pippa. And we are joined by Victoria Jenkins. Victoria is an award-winning adaptive fashion designer, disability advocate, speaker, and author. Victoria has worked as a garment technologist in the fashion industry for 16 years and became disabled in her mid-20s with a variety of gastrointestinal and musculoskeletal conditions, which led to her founding Unhidden, a socially responsible, universally designed fashion range for disabled and non-disabled people. And is disabled the correct term these days? That's acceptable, is it?
Yeah, well, the problem is disabled's not a bad word. It's an identifier. It's the same as saying someone's got brown hair or blue eyes. But I think it's the connotation. People assume we don't want to be called that, but it's just a description like LGBTQ.
Unhidden is the first brand of its kind to join the British Fashion Council.
Yeah.
This is all very impressive. Victoria,
Thanks.
Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thanks for having me.
I don't know where to start with that intro. I feel our standard question may be the wrong place to go, but let's go with it anyway. What is keeping you up at night?
Oh, sales.
Right.
Sales and representation, probably. Those are the two things.
Representation means?
Of my community.
And your disability is, a variety
well, it's a bit
of...
complex,
Yeah.
So I had an undiagnosed ulcer that burst in 2012. Ow. Yes,
that's gotta hurt.
Really quite painful. Had life-saving surgery. And then after that, doctors took me a bit more seriously. And then I was diagnosed with all sorts of other things, bits of me removed and rewired over time.
Bits of your intestinal system? Or?
Yeah, so my stomach's paralysed. So they created a second exit from my stomach and reconnected a different bit of my intestine. Okay. So my intestine has to do the job of my stomach.
Oh, wow.
But that's not musculoskeletal.
No, so that when I took my gallbladder out, that triggered an autoimmune response, which happens.
Gastrointestinal, presumably.
Yeah, but the because they pull it out because they do a keyhole and they go out through your ribs, it triggered it's gross. So now if I get knocked, then my skeletal. My upper
overreacts.
Yeah, so
and you get a
it
sort
hurts.
of arthritis almost.
Yes, yeah.
An inflammation.
Yeah. Like costochondritis is the closest thing to it. Like you get that if you throw up loads or you laugh too much, you can get that sort of an inflammation. It's like that.
It's a bit.
So do you have to be really careful about what you eat?
Yes. Beige and liquid is generally the safest, but the diet I'm meant to follow for my stomach is the exact opposite of what my diseased intestine, because that's also not quite right. They're kind of polar opposites.
Beige isn't the colour of food like Michael Jackson wanted white food. This is bananas, eggs. Is it?
I quite a lot of potato. I actually, when they did my stomach rewiring, it's a bit gross, but I did have fried chicken the night before, but because of my digestion system is so slow, 14 hours later they actually had to pull out my dinner from the night before.
Oh my god. Okay.
Because it was still there and they were like, oh, okay.
We know what you had, don't we? So anyway, tell us about Unhidden.
Yeah, so Unhidden came about. I was in hospital in 2016, one of many stays. But somebody else on the ward had cancer, and she had 2 stomas. So like when they put your intestine through your stomach wall, and a line in her arm, and she was there to get one in her chest. And she was wearing, jogging bottom and t-shirt. And she was like, I can't, this isn't how I want to dress here. It's not how I want to dress at home. It's not how I want to dress at work.
Yeah.
Or, going out and seeing friends.
How old was she? Quite young?
She was in her 40s.
Okay.
But yeah, it was
Quite
still,
young then.
Because all I want to do is wear jogging bottoms.
But I think it's that not having the choice, and also she couldn't. She had to be able to access various bits of her. So for that reason, it was
having
easier.
a waist can catch on things and all that kind of stuff.
So I was like, oh yeah, that's really obvious. And got pulled my laptop out because I was working from my hospital bed, as a lot of chronic sick people have to, and sort of had a little Google, and all I could find was very medical, very aimed sort of from the carer's perspective for a patient who was elderly. So yeah, it just wasn't very inspiring. And I thought, well, sort of the idea just sort of stayed with me. And I thought, well, let's see if I can use everything that I've learned, because I work predominantly in how clothes are constructed. Yeah. Let's see if I can have a go. And registered it in 2017, but we didn't launch for trading until 2020. Like the first photo shoot wasn't until that 2-week window in September before Christmas that I had the first ever photo shoot.
And what are the clothes like? If you could describe them, the kind of general.
So the first 10 pieces, it was more about like formal wear rather than really athleisure, because it's by its nature, it tends to be more accessible. So we had seated trousers, so they're designed for wheelchair users. So they're longer at the back. They're actually shaped for a seated position. So the excess is removed behind your knee, front of the hip. There's no extra seams on the back. There's no pockets on the back because you wouldn't be using them. And there's different ways of getting in and out of them.
Isn't it mind-blowing? And with respect, this is a novel idea.
Yeah.
I
And I'm not
find
even
it
the
so
first.
strange.
It makes so much sense, though.
Yeah, I mean, things Unhidden isn't the first. I think there's been other brands going a lot longer. Tommy Hilfiger launched in 2017. Didn't tell anyone about it, but they still do it, and they are expanding the range. But yeah, it is quite impressive we haven't. But I think that's testament to disability is still the last taboo. So until we're sort of represented, people just don't think about it.
No, but I find taboos really interesting. So there is something that shifted in the last 20 years about disability. They're appearing in films and TV shows all the time. There's always someone rolling on the screen now and stuff, which is good.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's 1 in 4 people in the UK
have a disability.
Yeah, and it's also
whoa! I find stats like that really those are really dangerous. Hang on, are we counting the dyslexics like me or something? 1 in 4 is insane.
No, and actually, I don't even think that's accurate, because we don't have enough data on disability. So we don't collect it everywhere that we should.
What is a disability then? Give me what the bar is.
It's anything that negatively impacts your quality of life for the rest of your life. I mean, some of them are, yes, don't get me wrong, some of it is mental health related, but as another stat, if we're going to look at it from a purely physical point of view, 7% of disabled people are wheelchair users. So they do not make up the majority of disability, but it is the only type that people understand.
Yeah. I mean, my third niece down is technically disabled because she's under 5 foot.
Yep, short stature. But like I said, we don't collect data enough, and not everybody even identifies with disability. You think about how we speak about cancer patients. You don't see very many people with cancer referring to themselves as disabled.
No.
But it's very unlikely you can have a life-threatening illness and walk away with it with nothing else for the rest of your life. So most of them, even though they don't use that word, they are technically in the community.
Because they describe themselves as ill, I suppose.
Yeah, and then there's temporary disabilities, like you break an arm, break a leg.
Yeah.
You're recovering from, you've just had a baby, but you've had a cesarean. You can't wear all of your wardrobe. You can't do all of your wardrobe up, or if you've got a newborn baby. There's lots of different ways where adaptive clothing helps. I think people need to realise how many of us there are. And, like myself, 80% of us acquire our disability. So we're not born with it. So I think people need to be aware that, a lot of people in the community actually refer to non-disabled people. I like to say non-disabled, but some people actually start saying now pre-disabled. Because if you have the privilege of reaching an older age, very likely that you will have some mobility related needs that might then impact your ability to dress yourself or others.
Okay, so let's keep going down this road, because I find it very interesting. You feel that we need to recognise that there is a bigger community of disabled people. You're saying massive community of disabled people. When you think that people don't understand that there's a lot of people with disabilities, okay?
Yeah.
Now we're sort of saying it's more than a community. It's like saying who's young and who's old.
Yeah.
It's
the world's largest marginalised group.
marginalised. It's
Yeah.
marginalised meaning that it's disrespected.
Yeah. So we're not treated the same as non-disabled people.
Cut out of things,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Let's take your disability in
Yeah.
your life in a perfect world. What is it that you would like? How should society be treating you differently?
Well, I mean,
helping you?
I think helping me. Well, I mean, I do get help now. I've got an access to work grant, so through that, I've got a PA who helps because I can't carry and lift heavy things. But obviously, I've quite a physical job. If we're on a photo shoot, we've got to take samples to and from the office, and runway shows are quite a lot of work. So it's having somebody else to do those things. I am also waiting for a mobility scooter because I can't walk and stand for long periods of time without pain. Because getting a pain doctor to actually help you manage your pain properly.
It's complicated.
They just don't. They offer you CBT therapy, which is, I can talk about how much pain I'm in, but I don't see how that's going to take it away. So kind of useless. But I also don't want to be so heavily medicated that I can't function. You know, obviously I've got to have my brain working rather than being a zombie.
Let's come back to pain because that's a really complicated subject because actually there's very few ways to deal with pain and it's basically opioids, marijuana. You know, it's like,
or just crack on. Use mobility aids.
Yeah, but in your example, you have got a PA assistant, you have got a mobility aid. So is it you know how to access? You know, so to me, you are marginalised. But there is support coming. It might be slow and ineffective. And weirdly, I just saw my wife. She's at Fox Court today, which is where they decide a lot of this stuff, you know, where it's the final appeal for like, I need help. They're not helping me. She's not a judge. She's a doctor. So she just sits with, so it's a sort of subject that comes up in the house. But do you feel that because you aren't, you know, surely you've been recognised that you're getting this mobile help, which is assessed by a doctor, who then it's some slow ass shit process, I'm sure. Slow ass process.
It's very slow.
Yeah. But ultimately, if you've got your mobility scooter and your PA, do you think then you're being recognised and non-marginalised? Do you think it's, you know, people in the street need to know?
I think it is people in the street still. I mean, as an example, you know, when I was pitching for investors, if I took my stick, and actually when I go on panel talks, if I take my stick, I'm treated very differently to if I don't take my stick. So I stopped taking it to some. I actually was sat on a panel with all the other panelists and someone leaned forward and said, I think that's for the speakers. And I was like, no, I am one.
Yeah.
They really, and yeah, I mean, it wasn't a fashion crowd. She felt very embarrassed when I then sat there and explained who I am and what I do. But well, yeah, it's really tempting. But yeah, it does happen.
But this happens to all of us. We all have moments in life where people knock us back in line. And then if you've got a disability or, you know, it's like people who attach it to their situation.
Sure.
But
so then,
you want people to recognize it, but actually don't everyone want to be treated normally? Isn't half the thing with disability, you know, I've seen that, you know, whether I've seen it on TV or, you know, it's like, don't stare at me and run away like a weirdo. Talk to me.
Not with the government's last, like, don't ask, assume, or whatever it was. It's like, no, we don't want to be asked constantly by complete strangers our medical history.
What was the last government
It was thing? I think it was ask, don't assume, or something like that. And everyone was like, oh God, we don't need to be asked. You know, and like you said, like, I shouldn't have to give my medical history to explain my disability. I should just be able to say I'm disabled. We move on.
So let's talk about your business within this world. You're making clothes.
Yes.
So you're by its very nature, you're focused on people with physical disabilities. Can I make that step?
And sensory considerations. They do come in as well, yeah.
Sort of the ADHD, autism, neurodiverse.
All of those.
Okay. Great. Okay, I'm ticking a few boxes.
And then there's menopause as well. There's people who've gone through.
Tick a box.
Yeah. You must have multiple things wrong with you, Pippa.
Charming.
Well, most of them are mental, so it's not a problem.
It's so funny. It's such a badge of honour to, it's like...
No, but there's weird stuff like, for example, my mum. Take my mum who can't walk very far.
Stuff. Oh, right, sorry.
Right? She is disabled in Windsor and Maidenhead.
Oh, wow,
She's not disabled in Wiltshire.
Wow.
So she could get a disabled parking thing in Windsor because she can't walk very far. In Wiltshire, you have to literally not be able to walk from the curb to your door, to a door to get the disabled.
Yeah.
Like,
it's ridiculous.
Parking permit.
I didn't know it was most of these rules are national, so they take little views.
In every council.
Wow,
councils.
Okay, so we're making clothes. So then the question hits me is like, there's a million disabilities. So how do I design clothes for every situation?
Well, I mean, some of it, there's differences. I say adaptive is where it's very specific to one disability and not everybody could wear it. So the seated designs, I generally call adaptive, and short stature can't be worn by everyone above a certain height. So again, adaptive. But universal is things where I built things in that anyone needs. So the shirts, or there's no buttons on anything. So you just like very much like stripper clothing, as we've already referred to. You can undo them, but you can also do them up one-handed. They have openings in the arms. So if you're going through treatment, you can access your arm without taking your clothes off. So there is a dignity thing in there as well. All of the pockets have buttonhole openings that you can feed tubes through.
I think the ADHDs might like that as well, you know.
The number of times I've been to the doctor and realised that they want to take my blood pressure and I'm wearing a tight sleeve top and you have to take your entire top off.
Oh, I hate that. Yeah.
You know, that would work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Let me rip.
Yeah.
Let it rip.
And then, with the stoma access, again, that a lot of it came back
to stoma access?
So on the dresses, there are hidden openings so you can empty your stoma without having to take your whole dress off.
That's amazing.
Stoma is a colostomy bag?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we've answered this, but how did you end up doing this? Was it because of your own disability that you thought?
Well, it was that woman impatient that sort of switched my brain on. And I thought, well, gosh, let's look at everybody else. And then, you start doing the research, and I looked at other existing adaptive brands and sort of asking, like just generally reaching out on social media to other people with a disability saying, I'm doing this, what would you need? And just sort of relentless, almost like asking people for their opinion and what would help them and kind of building the garments from there.
Is it, the fashion industry is slightly full of beautiful people? Is it, is it that they're...
It depends on your definition of beautiful. I think the reason the fashion industry, one, it is based on aesthetics. And I think there is an assumption that if you're disabled, you're ugly. I think like if you just put it that bluntly, I think there is that. But also we segregate disabled children. So if you go to school, how are you going to get, if you don't go to school or the same schools, how are you going to then be able to go to design school? Are the design universities and colleges accessible? Invariably not. And if you put the word disabled on your CV, would somebody in fashion hire you? I know damn well if I'd put disabled instead of chronic sick on my CV, I wouldn't have worked at any of the places I worked.
I found it...
I'm surprised they hired you with chronic sick.
Same, frankly. But I just had to say, it's managed, don't worry, it's not a problem. But also I was good at my job and I had a very good CV behind me, which is why I sort of managed it.
Okay, so how is it going? Tell me about things.
It's going good. It's good. There's some really exciting things that I'm not allowed to talk about yet.
Do the customers find you?
No, well, so not so much. So the other problem is advertising. So one, I haven't had the money to like run adverts and so on. But if we try and run an advert through Meta, they made the disabled community a protected characteristic in January 2022.
What does that mean?
It means you can't target them for marketing.
Oh, for God's sake.
Which is super helpful for me. So you have to look at things.
Why would they do that? What's their logic?
I understand their logic was to stop people selling dangerous or fake medical cures or aids via Meta. So I completely understand the logic.
So I get that with kids, and I get that with, people that for whatever reason can't make their own decisions. But why shouldn't you be sold all kinds of crap if you're in a wheelchair?
Yeah, you're desperate and you'll buy any old crap, but the placebo effect's so effective. I mean, I bought some crap, I
mean, I wish so many of these fake things would work. I've tried them all.
Yeah.
Please, I know you won't, but please work.
Yeah.
So that makes it very difficult. So there's no point in us running ads because it's too broad. But the other problem is if we do run an ad and we have someone with a visible disability, so either with a prosthetic or a feeding tube or in a wheelchair, they ban it because they flag it as they think we're trying to sell a medical device when we're not. So then I have to appeal it and say, nope, we're selling clothes. And they're like, oh yeah, fair enough, off you go. But if that happens too many times, they could ban your account or flag your account. And it's happened to adaptive brands in the States. So it's something we don't really risk. So we don't run ads because that would be a pain to keep going through. And because we can't sort of really target, like we can only find our customers by saying, do you have cancer? So do they follow cancer charities? Or are they into the Paralympics? But not every disabled person likes the Paralympics. So it's really hard to sort of nail down into your niche if you have to go around the houses to find them.
You're almost forced to go back to traditional forms of advertising that just aren't that successful anymore, like print advertising or TV adverts or things that aren't through the internet.
To be fair,
the internet is all anybody looks at anymore.
Meta or Google are a nightmare to get any advert approved. It may surprise you to learn that this podcast struggles to get any. You can't possibly guess why. But also, I've been involved a lot in music, and every time you do Jamaicans, they say it's not English.
Oh, wow.
And I've had the most amusing conversations with, frankly, and people generally on the phone in India talking to me. And I mean this with love, not in an English that is easy to understand for an Englishman. You know, we have quite funny comment and they're saying, you know, it's not, and it's saying, well, it's Jamaican English, you know, and I know this sounds ridiculous, but we've had things banned and whatever. And you're like, so I think the world of meta and stuff is a nightmare, even if you're trying to do something even vaguely normal. But what you're describing is like insane.
Yeah. So like we can't use the language we want. We can't be accessible. It reduces our reach. We can't use the adverts because of that. So it's kind of like, well, that's not a level playing field.
Everyone could go online and advertise get rich quick schemes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's every numpty out there going like, oh, do this to make money. And, you know, that's fine. And a lot of those are pyramid schemes and whatever, you know, they're so silly things. But I imagine if, you know, you've said so many interesting things, it's like, disabled people are considered less attractive. Well, that's probably about perception is based on how much exposure we have to something, and then
which is like I think they are updating the stats. I know all the stats because I wrote a book about it, so that's why I try to remember all of it. So I think disability makes up 0.02% of advertising. Like that's how often we're shown.
Well, you can't advertise to them.
Well, no, that's how much we're shown in advertising.
How much they appear. Yeah, that has changed radically in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it has. It really has.
No, but just think how revolutionary it was. This probably will mean nothing to you, but think how revolutionary it was when Dove showed fat women.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And that was like
that means nothing to me. No,
it
does. Why would it not mean anything to me?
Because I would have thought you'd have
looked to the adverts. You know,
I just wouldn't have thought that you'd have necessarily looked to the adverts because it's not an advert for you. I remember
because it was, you know, it was like, oh wow, and there is a counter to this that Bill Burr was very funny about in terms of films that, you know, but it was, and it still happens. The sort of, you know, the plus size lady and the changing the perceptions. And
also imagine like as a child, if you've never seen you never saw people in wheelchairs like growing up, then you feel very othered anyway. But, you know, now imagine there's all these amazing people and many of them advocates that I know. And now they have children that can see them going out and either just having a normal job, but also advocating for it on social media. But even the fact that they're being shown on social media is something very different that they never had. And it just makes you feel a bit more included, you know.
On a base level is that it's like we don't know what to say. It's just like, okay, you know, someone's dying of cancer. Nobody knows what to say. Everyone says the wrong thing. People don't know whether to talk about it or not talk about it. And they send texts to, you know, people, you know, because my sis just went through this and passed, and like she'd be getting texts in the supermarket. Oh, you know, I'm just thinking of you and I hope you're okay. No, I'm not fucking okay. I've got terminal cancer. Stop reminding me. But no, it's disabled people. I always feel like I don't know what to do. Like I don't know whether I'm supposed to, because I can't help but notice.
We're all different.
You can't help but notice. I would struggle to point out, but you know, if someone's, you know, you can't help. I mean, you can't not notice. Everyone's staring at them.
Yeah.
So it's an educational thing, and it sounds like the government got it wrong. But they're not easy answers because people want to be treated differently.
Well, I think yes, that is true. I think also it would help if we had actual disabled people in the disability minister roles in government. At the moment, I think there's 3 disabled MPs out of all of them. It's not very many. And the disability minister
that's not rocket science, isn't it?
E-hole. And he also,
surprise.
There was, so the UN did a review of disability rights and disability lives in the UK and how well our government has done since 2016. And it was in Geneva earlier this year. Not only did our disability minister not go, but things have got worse. Like drastically, everything that they set out, they've made things worse.
I think you might find that quite a lot of things.
I mean, across the board, obviously, but like our own minister can't even bother to go and like
you make a really good point. Why aren't those people disabled? It should be a requirement
you need
of
lived
the job.
experience. Because if you're not disabled, like, you can't. You know, I can't speak for every single disabled person. By the way, like there's a lot of us, but
and
our government needs to have people who have that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Lived experience is really important. And I mean, you know, it's just incalculable that someone would take advice from someone who doesn't know what the hell it's really. So I saw one recently, which is there was this huge thing kicking off because it affected one of my friends who's a therapist, saying, wow, that therapist has got all these problems and they've had all these things. It's like, good. Like, I don't want to go to a therapist that hasn't had drug problems and mental problems and has got ADHD and got this and got that, because that's the whole fucking point.
Anybody that trains as a psychiatrist has to go through therapy themselves.
Yes,
I think
they
that's
do.
It's
quite good. And I'm there a bit. Yeah, it would be helpful. Like, there's this chap. I don't know if it's a chap or woman. There is an account on X called The Disabled Doctor, and they're trying to start their own GP practice where everybody is disabled. So the nurses, the receptionists, the pharmacologists, everybody is. And I was like, I would literally move to wherever that practice is to have a better experience going through the medical system. I was like, I think the whole, like, wherever it is, we're all just, it'll be Mecca for us, like we will all go there.
So what I wanted to get to is you mentioned the Paralympics, and you think to yourself, Christ, if that's not a good idea, then I don't know what is. What are the do's and don'ts? Okay, whether that be in business or if you can give people some guidance about what we should or shouldn't be doing.
Well, the issue with the Paralympics is mostly the superhuman idea. So the idea that you can overcome your disability. Some people can't, and also there has to be an acknowledgement that to be a Paralympian, you inherently have to be wealthy most of the time, because the equipment to train with costs 3 times as much. The trainers, there's less of them. So it's a lot harder to become a Paralympian, but also there are so many conditions where you can't be one. So like not every wheelchair user can become a wheelchair rugby player, for example. So it's just that kind of, because people only see us in the context of you're either a Paralympian or...
I also
think people see it like that.
But it is quite that
but
way.
We are.
It's also saying that we're super. So like trying to say it is a better thing, it kind of just undermines that it's not everyone's experience. Like I still love the Paralympics. I think they're amazing.
Do you take the view from them that it's saying they're superhuman? I think maybe some of the choice of words of presenters
there's just
naive.
A lot of inspiration porn around it. That's the problem with the Paralympics. Yeah.
It is inspiring, though, someone overcoming any obstacle. We can't run away from it.
Yeah, and actually, I suppose the point is that people, like, what people are finding inspiring, whether is kind of the same thing, whether you're a Paralympian or an Olympian, is that you're really good at a sport.
Yeah.
Like,
overcoming adversity is the number one engaged story for a human. It's the basis of every film, everything you've ever seen.
It's really
about
hard to
overcoming adversity.
To get away from.
And it does help people live better lives. And I think it's a really complicated thing to be like, But
for the people that like, they're never going to get better.
Yeah,
and they're having a terrible life and like, they don't have any help from the government, from their friends. They might even not have any friends because they're so isolated.
Let's unpack that slowly. The government needs to do better.
Yeah.
Better. Sorry.
But at the moment...
God, it's just outrageous, the language on this thing. But let's put that on one side. Yeah. We have, somehow you want to raise, disability wants to be raised as a thing. There are only certain ways you do that. And if we're going to end up in a world whereby raising it and getting it slightly naively wrong, and we will develop.
And that's fine, but I think there still has to be, and it is really nuanced and it's really hard. And I'm not saying I have the solution, but it makes the people that are not going to get better, that live in constant pain or constantly unwell, like the Paralympics don't help them at all, and how people talk about disability and they almost can't identify with that because that's not their experience.
I think maybe that's what you're trying to get to as well, is we want to live in a world where we recognize that some people have some disabilities and they require additional help, and it's not a burden, it's a pleasure, it's love.
Exactly.
And there's so many people out there full of love, who will just do anything for people.
I don't know.
Unfortunately, I just don't think we're at that point.
We're not at that point.
Yeah. I mean, when you're living in a country where, frankly, the hostile environment is being spread out to all these different things, like, if you're disabled, you have to be able to prove that you have a severe enough disability that you can't work or you don't get...
Yeah, every 18 months. Which, bearing in mind, like, I know, double amputees, their legs aren't going to grow back. So they're not, that's not going to change. But yeah, there's so many. I mean, yeah, it's a pretty scary time.
The narrative that unfortunately, you blame the government, but unfortunately, for whatever reason, we're living not in London, but we're living in a country now. I mean, okay, so we do video games tax credit and film tax credits. And when you do that, you have to go to the BFI, the British Film Institute, and you get points for Britishness, and they're not just, do you put a red post box and a red double-decker bus in your film or whatever. So
Black
there's supposed to be
taxi.
diversity, inclusion. So I had an amusing meeting this week when I was like, how about anti-immigration, is that now a British value? Because that seems to be what it does. And you would blame the government. I would blame the country because they're basing it. They're feeding to a group of people, which is 55% of the country.
The government's feeding the media.
I can tell you for a fact, 55% of the countries think we're too soft on the people coming over from on the channel in little boats.
That's because they are believing what the media says, and who's telling the media how and what to say, and that is the government.
No, I would slightly disagree.
But this narrative around disability
feeds.
and benefit fraud within the context of disability makes up in terms of like fraudulent cases, again, it's like 0.2% of cases are fraudulent. I actually, hands on heart, if you can manage to get a disability benefit through this government and it's false, I think you deserve a freaking medal, because it's that difficult to get it that if you can convince them, well done.
But hey,
it's that hard. But instead, we're like, no, we just won't give you benefits. We're going to make you feel like you're the problem. There's an appeal system that we already know is broken. We're going to make it really, really stressful. And we're going to make the process take forever as well. Then we also will means test it potentially.
But we are going to allow Michelle Mone to sell billions of pounds worth of
non-working PPE.
I'm sorry, I have to pull it. The government are a piece of shit, and hopefully they'll be out soon. Yeah, but I have to pull it back because the media, right? They feed us what sells, and there might be a bit of influence going on.
But if they didn't do that, what if they didn't do that?
I'm about to extend to. I've been having this thought for weeks. Okay,
instead of being the Daily Rage, why don't we be the Daily Peace? It would be much nicer.
I'm completely with you, but I think the media needs to be regulated to find a middle ground and to bring people together. So we had a very good example, which which is a very silly example. I'm going to get his name wrong. You're going to get upset. Rishi Sunak banging a hammer using the side of it.
Oh, that was hysterical. But it turns out he was told to do that.
Yeah. So I'm sitting with my good friend Chris.
I did laugh a lot about that.
Chris from Wales. He does this in this podcast. Big up, Christopher Rees. But he was saying to me, it made him angry because he'd read it in the media. Now, I think that's a very simple example of when the mainstream media has a duty to not inflame shit and not just say, because lots of people will not find out that it's fake.
Yeah.
So as a tiny little, I'm not defending, I'm just saying as a tiny little bit of clickbait, everyone loved it, everyone gets angry. And I swear to God,
it's always a huge...
I'm with you 100%. I think we should start saying the media has the power to divide us. It has the power to ruin the whole world. And they say they do it because that's what sells and that's what we want. I think we have to regulate it.
Yeah, don't sell us that, because look at what's happening. It's awful.
What is your biggest fuck up to date?
Oh, biggest fuck up to date. Hiring a marketing agency that wasn't trained in DEI. I think that was probably the most expensive.
What's
lesson.
DEI?
Diversity, equality, and inclusion.
Oh, right.
So they didn't know
equity and inclusion.
Equity. Yeah. So don't know the language, don't know the nuance, haven't worked with disabled people. So there's quite a lot of language changes there. So I was paying someone to create content and to put adverts out that I had to then rewrite or redo
totally completely because wrong,
so that was a bit of a hefty lesson.
Are the marketing agents full of disabled people?
Well, there are now.
Okay, since I set one up.
No. I don't. But I know the founders. We do quite a lot of us in the disabled entrepreneur space. We do all know each other.
Is there a community that you all like online or something? Is there?
I mean, most of it's online, but I think social media, that's kind of how we all find each other.
What would you recommend to a disabled founder? Where should they go?
A disabled founder?
What's helped you?
Well, I used both Enterprise Nation. We're very good because it's a free resource, and we're 50% more likely to be in poverty. So there's quite a big disparity in starting a business. Then there's Meaningful Business, which is a social impact sort of online networking company, and they'll put you in touch with, you kind of do speed networking with other business founders, but you can also pitch to investors. I think because they're based on social impact, they're more prepared to help people with disabilities. And then there's Hatch Enterprise, which are brilliant. So there are places. There's just not, I think it's growing, which is great, but there's not very many.
You've got to search them out a bit.
Yeah. And then we have a huge issue with financing and loans because a lot of people with disabilities might not have had a regular job. So how are they going to finance a company? A bank's not going to give them a loan. So
did you say you raised some money?
I did, yes. It took a year, to be fair. And actually what really boosted it was...
To be fair, that's not a long time to raise money.
It felt like it, pitching that for that many people over that strength of time. But I mean, what changed it was going on Dragon's Den I got investors off the back of that pretty much.
Did you?
Yeah, it aired in February.
You'd recommend Dragon's Den, would you?
Yeah. It's terrifying.
All my clients that have been on Dragon's Den have taken the money on the night and then said, no, thank you.
I got a full round of no's. So
really?
no. But I
Really?
I had 3 models that came out. Actually, Deborah Meaden's sister, Emma, is a wheelchair user. So I really hoped I was going to get Deborah.
They said too small a market, too fragmented.
Yeah, I think also, at the time I was made to order, and investors don't want to invest in you to give you money to buy stock. So I understand, but it would have, it would have been a game changer. It actually, I don't know, it didn't air, thankfully, because they're very kind. But I came up, before I went in, I was like, one day I want to be a dragon. And then came out and burst into tears because I felt I'd let the community down. It was a good experience. I'm glad I did it. And yeah, the people that saw it and disagreed with them. Yeah. And they gave me quite a good, it was a 15-minute pitch that I had, and they were very nice. Peter Jones said it was the perfect pitch. I will take that. So the pitching was good.
He didn't want to give you any money.
Business. But it's okay. Not everyone's going to agree.
I guess if you'd been pitching for a year, you'd probably got it down pat.
Yeah. I mean, and also you only have, for them, you have 2.5 to 3 minutes, and you're not allowed to redo the pitch. So even if you fumble it, that's it. Whereas answering the questions, if you want to slightly change how you phrase something, you are allowed to ask them to go back and record it again.
Wait a second. You said it was a 15-minute pitch, and then you said it was a 3-minute pitch.
So the initial bit when you go and you say the business, that's like 2.5 minutes to 3 minutes. So when you're just saying to them, this is my business, this is what I'm doing. And then you go into the question bit. And I was actually there for an hour and a half talking to them for that bit.
Wow.
So you go on for quite it was a long time.
Well, that's some great advice, I would say. And I would guess that the BBC is open to more disabled founders too. And,
definitely. I think they're
and
actively looking for them, I think. Yeah. And the problem, again, you don't want to fall into the inspiration porn category either. No. But I think there's so many things, there's so many tech things and businesses and all sorts that I think we'll start seeing more and more. I mean, last year there were loads. This year there was quite a lot. I say loads in, out of 20 episodes, maybe, out of a series, it might not be that many. It's certainly not 1 in 4, but it's still quite a lot.
What's the best advice you think you've received in this? Has anyone given you some really good advice?
I think trusting your own intuition and gut, and then also asking for help or a mentor. Like having a mentor was really important. I mean, it's difficult with what I want to do. Obviously, there's not, trying to get someone who's worked in fashion that can help in an entirely new category that no one's really done before to the degree that I'm trying to do it. That's, they're not necessarily the best people to help you, but they'll try. So I had, people instead that were good in business, or people that have done well in retail over fashion, because fashion is, almost art. Whereas retail is really, that's where I want to be. I want to be able to make affordable clothing for people. So.
Yeah, and a lot of advice is often naturally quite negative about,
there's a lot of you can't do that. Not, I don't even think, a lot of it is, I don't even think the market's big. It's not worth it. Like no one's going to want it. Like, cool.
It's easier you don't mean to do it, but if anyone asks your opinion about some things, you might be positive, like, yeah, that's great. It's quite hard to come up with inventive ideas of how you might do it. It's much easier to see the problems within it. This is a ridiculous question, but I'm curious because, did all the stuff you've gone through, did you feel a change in how you thought and everything?
In your psychology?
Yeah, in your psychology.
Yes and no. Not that I would notice. I think mentally, generally, if you feel unwell, mentally, you tend to feel a bit lower. I think I managed to rewire my brain almost to ignore that. Because if I succumbed to feeling that miserable and in pain and sick every day, I wouldn't ever get out of bed. So it is a case of having to retrain. What can I actually accomplish? What can I manage? So I'll be like, if I just stand up and get out of bed, that's half the battle done. And usually if I could get to do that, then I would go out.
The pain seems in some way actually.
The nausea is pretty bad, to be fair.
You've got a lot of nausea too. Have you tried? Oh my
God! Have you tried? Have you seen what I just put on social media? I've got a T-shirt that says, "Yes, I've tried yoga." Because have you tried kale, acupuncture,
ganja,
all these extra things that are usually a lot more expensive and not accessible for everyone price point wise? Yes, I've tried.
That's a really interesting exchange in that most people who aren't disabled think that, or, you meet anybody that has an issue, a lot of people's reaction will be to try and help.
Yes. And it's lovely and it's a nice thing, but it's, sometimes we're not always there as a problem. Sometimes you just want to moan and say, I feel awful. And people are like, oh, have you tried X, Y, Z? And it's like, yes, but it also then starts to come under the unsolicited medical advice.
That is
the amount of times I've had to say, do you not think after 11 years of going through all this stuff that I might know a bit more about my condition and how to treat it than you lovely person on the internet that I've just met for the first time?
Yeah.
So we've got one for our do's and don'ts, although you never know in life.
Or generally don't suggest things. That person probably knows more about their condition.
But generally that's not
but it's
just applicable to disabled people.
No.
Sometimes you want to moan about something.
Yeah.
You don't want somebody to say to you, oh, right, what you should be doing.
Hang on. You're saying sometimes. All women do this constantly, especially in the evening. And the last thing you should do, I've learned as a 45-year-old man, is try and help. Just let them out. Just let it out. And as a man, especially as you're just at the end of the evening, you assume that they're needing a problem. Yeah.
Sometimes I just want to have a little rant.
I know, but this is a man-female thing.
Yeah, but I didn't want to say that because you get upset when we think. No. But it is a man thing. And we haven't done what's the worst advice you've ever been given?
I think the worst advice was, oh no, don't talk about disability. No one wants to hear about it.
Yeah, that's not going to work for you.
I was like, cool. How do you suggest I go about it? And they're like, oh, just don't mention that. Mention all the other things, but not that bit.
Do you know what it's sounding to me like?
Or don't say it's by disabled people for disabled people.
Not velcro for disabled
exactly.
people.
I'll tell you what, it's just rip-off clothing. Yeah. Fine, please.
But
I'm social impact too. But I'm not going to tell you how.
I don't know. I feel like "Let It Rip" is quite a good slogan.
Yeah, it would be quite fun.
It feels a little bit like disabilities. We need to be told how to feel about it by people with disabilities. A bit like as I said to a black friend about Black Lives Matter, I don't feel I can comment on it. And he says, "You're right, you can't, but you're supposed to just listen." The thing is, it's very obvious if you're black or not. And what we're saying with disabilities is 1,000 million types of this and all levels. And yeah, I have a right to tell people about tinnitus or ADHD, but these are not big issues, I don't think, and therefore, but at the other end of the scale, people with heavy disabilities have very complex views on it. So I think people should talk, the people who know what they're talking about should talk about it.
Yeah, again, it's the same, just listen. And, I know, and I've just got so used to it when I get out, I can see if I say I'm disabled, I can see someone's brain just going, how, why, where, what, I can't see it. Yeah. And I know it doesn't matter what the rest of half hour of what I'm saying is, that's all they're thinking about. So I have to address it early on because I'm like, otherwise they're not going to listen to a word of what I say. They also don't understand why it's relevant and why I'm talking about it. And that also will go on in their brain on a little loop. But she's not disabled. I can't see a disability. What's going on? She's fine. Yeah, she's fine. She's making it up. She's faking, God forbid. So I don't mind doing it.
Well, it's like chronic fatigue syndrome, isn't it? Or stuff that's completely, you can't see it. Well, that's a disability, isn't it?
It is. Sorry, I thought you were going to say it's not a thing. And I was like, I'm going to have to throw things at you.
Oh, right.
Because there's so many people's attitude to that, and Emmy and
syndromes are hard ones because they're always like they're badly, but it's definitely a thing.
But you can't, exactly. But it's just I think just being open to listening and slightly changing that perception that disability obviously doesn't look a certain way, but that it's not just wheelchair users, it's not just ramps.
What do you think is bullshit in your industry and why?
Ads are bullshit. We're selling. But we're not able to sell the way we want to, and I think just the snobbery of the industry is bullshit. Like what goes down a runway. These all these people are all the same size, all moody people. That's not who's buying the clothes and who's wearing the clothes. So I think there's this huge dissonance between fashion and then retail. Like I remember one of my tutors actually at uni saying, maybe one of you will be a fashion designer and some of you will work with clothes. And it was said with such disdain. I was like, but I want people to wear my designs. I don't want only a small select handful of people to wear. I want everybody to wear it.
Because I've designed some crazy shit.
Yeah, that you can't sit down in and, you've got one arm up like this.
Only a 6 foot skinny girl can wear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Victoria, this is the 10-second quickfire round.
Oh gosh.
Okay. This is where we're going to ask you a list of questions to get to know you a little better, and you have about 10 seconds, never works, to answer each question.
Antonia, cue the music, please. Question number 1, what was your first job?
Pattern cutter.
Okay. Oh. What was your worst job?
Pattern cutter? No. Oh gosh, being a pot wash actually in a pub.
Yeah,
that sucks. Favourite subject at school?
Art.
What's your special skill?
Drawing.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
A ballerina or a designer. And then I broke my ankle.
You look like a ballerina and you are a designer. Tick, tick, tick.
What did your parents want you to be when you grew up?
Oh gosh, I think they knew it would be creative. Probably an art teacher.
Something that made money.
Yes, probably an art teacher.
What's your go-to karaoke song?
Zombie by the Cranberries.
Oh, nice. Yes, I could do that one too. That sounds good. Okay, saving his presents. Office dogs, business or bullshit?
Business.
Good choice. Well done. He's been getting a real
He's
knocking.
been snoring quite loudly. Have you heard him?
He's been getting absolutely smashed of late. As long as he doesn't drop a fart, we're all right. Have you ever been fired?
No, but made redundant, which almost feels very much the same when it's done quite quickly. If you're like
Apart from you get some money.
Well, it depends on if you're like last in, first out territory. Then it feels very much like being fired, and also actually with a startup fired. Maybe.
What's your vice?
Chocolate. Sugar, I would say, because I have a really sweet tooth. Sugar,
very good. What recommendations do you have to read, watch, or listen to?
Oh, recommendations.
Are you a podcast person? Do you listen to podcasts?
I am. I mean, I really like off menu. I like funny ones. I don't necessarily want to always be learning things, because I think with a lot of my job, it's a lot of absorbing information. So I just kind of want to switch off. So yeah, off menu is one of my favourites. I do love the earlier seasons of, and apologies guys, My Dad Wrote a Porno, because that was just breathtakingly funny.
Genuinely.
I've watched some of those early ones.
So
but you walk along the road and you're laughing out loud. It's kind of embarrassing.
Yes, it's one of those.
Yeah.
I mean, my partner was driving once when we were listening to that, and he swerved the car. I was like, no, we have to put something else on because it's too funny. I
think that's a good example of taboo breaking too, because it's sort of British are quite uncomfortable talking about sort of sex, and your dad's got
Sex with your parents.
Sex with your parents
has written a porno,
and it was just Belinda Blinks. I think
that
it just stays in your head, doesn't it?
And they were so funny about it too, that she sort of come in the room, she's naked already. You know, when did that happen?
That's the thing, it was the dissecting of the things, and then they're trying to even say the sentence, you just hear them dying laughing.
Such a bad writer.
So good.
Like none of the like.
It's been a huge success, the book now, of course, and because of it, he's written.
But like the venue that they were in would change halfway through a scene.
Oh God, yeah, so good. Yeah.
Okay, so very good.
I know I should probably say Sensible Places, but like now.
What are you watching at the moment?
The Fallen House of Usher.
Oh, is it
quite enjoying? Yeah, I mean, it's taken a bit of a while to. You still can't quite work out where it's going, but I have been enjoying that.
Okay,
And I'm rewatching Hannibal because I really love the books.
I did enjoy the series.
It's
to be fair,
really disturbing. I definitely had nightmares the first time round, and I'm going to just do it to myself again. But Mads Mikkelsen's amazing in it.
Yeah.
And hot.
Not going to disagree, to be honest.
So that's it. That was pretty much it. So do you want to pitch your,
No, you don't.
You would give you 30 seconds. Do you want to tell the world,
please go and look on unhiddenclothing.com, although the brand is still just called Unhidden. Don't get me started on that. Look on our Instagram, which is unhidden.uk. We will be doing something in London Fashion Week in February. We will be announcing a very big retail partnership in March or April. Do keep eyes peeled. And, don't forget to shop for your disabled and chronic sick friends in Christmas. We've got everything in stock. Go for it.
Great stuff.
I really want to know what the partnership is, but I guess we're just going to have to wait.
You'll have to wait, unfortunately.
April?
Yeah, April. I mean, I'm itching to tell people it's really hard. And it's going to make the next 3 months. I've got to work really hard, a lot. So it's not really ramping down for Christmas. It's kind of...
Every time you get good news, isn't it? It's like, yes,
yes.
I've got to do all that stuff now. I said I'd deliver a million things by Tuesday,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Brilliant. Good. Victoria, you've been an absolute pleasure. And thank you for demystifying some of the incredibly confusing world and wicked business you've got. So thank you for coming on the show. Big up what you're doing. Thank you, Pippa. Thanks, Antonio. Thanks, Romeo. That has been this week's episode of Business Without Bullshit. It's ciao.